Recorded here at 914 Studios. This was a refuge for these young artists, a garage that turned into a pop culture history for rock and roll.
Thank you, one and all. Tokens right here. Under the boardwalk, down by the sea. Artie Resnick, writer supreme. Good lovin' and under the boardwalk. In 2016, I stumbled upon a 1/4-inch, 7.5 inch reel of tape that I used to take home to listen to on a nightly basis during the making of our second Janis Ian album at 914 Recording Studios, the follow-up LP to Stars, with the working title of Watercolors, circa 1974. It was a well-traveled reel, living at times in my hot desert garage in Palm Springs or on a moving van, moving me, Marilyn, Jill, and Jackie to a beautiful but oftentimes freezing Nashville, Tennessee, and then a U-turn back to LA. A few weeks ago, I called Bernie Grundman at his mastering studios in Hollywood. Bernie is the dean of mastering, engineers with a doctorate in baking and bringing back to life old beat-up tapes and getting them onto a safe audio landing on a CD or of the new vinyl. I met with Bernie and he began the surgery. We toiled and talked until several hours later it was ready for a playback. We inhaled our collective breaths, and just like that, I heard At 17 and the other delicious Janis Ian songs contained on the soon-to-be retitled Between the Lines, the Grammy-winning, the double platinum plus LP, now a warmer, more cinemascopic than ever before, and with a wonderful new posture and pride and breathtaking timeless quality, recorded and mixed at 914. Which brings us to today. 914 was a studio that could, strategically located 100 yards from our favorite 24-hour-a-day food joint. The incomparable Blauvelt Diner, a studio prerequisite next to good sound is good food. Joking aside, the music we cut in 1971 through 1975-76 still makes a serious statement, and when our music is played on the radio, it stands taller than most and sounds better than ever. I stand here what is now the shell of a studio that used to be, but what I see is our parking lot loaded to the gills with musicians, producers, label heads, clients, artists, cars, and even James Taylor's motorhome dominating the frontage of 914. I can still see the super packed lot when we had Strings and Brass and Reed Cats from the New York Phil parking their cars on the famous 914 football field, goalposts and all. And of course, Hallie Coletta's beautiful 914 glass logo subtly glistening on a late winter day, welcoming everyone in. Hallie's art was returned to me in an unassuming paper bag by Phil Ramone in the 90s, when Phil slipped it under my arm just prior to his receiving the Henry Mancini Award for Achievement in Music, an event that he invited Marilyn and me to, and I had not seen that stained glass artwork since 1975, when I headed to the West Coast in Los Angeles. 914 Recording Studio, who every day would lift off its reserved unknown spot on a secret music planet and return to planet Earth later that night or even a week later with greatness and genius sounding songs, always entitled A Great Chunk of Work. 914 Recording Studio, who every day had the daily grind of honoring our commitments to equipment leasing companies, to financial backers, and to payroll and to rent. Difficult though it was at times, my trusty and loyal support team at the front desk or in my office, like Shuto Merrill, currently a judge in the Boston area, Deborah Triplett, photographer extraordinaire in North Carolina, Laura Margulies, intern and granddaughter of the great Abe Margulies, Terry Grippo, who was way ahead of her time in balancing 914 business and getting her kids to and from school on time, working their hearts out, and they would slam away checking on accounts receivable so we could stay open and ahead of the game while we were making records. The core. A&R Studios and Phil Ramone, who kick-started me. Artie Kaplan, sax contractor, believer and brother. Les Paul, the Les Paul. Don Costa, the Don Costa. Artie Resnick, songwriter, Under the Boardwalk, Good Lovin'. Teddy Randazzo, songwriter, going out of my head. Hank Catania, studio designer. Larry Dahlstrom and Aaron Barron, electronics maintenance geniuses. Neil Muncy, SSI console designer and builder. My engineers, Larry, 24 hours a day, Alexander. Louis, sometimes 48 hours a day, Lahov. There can never be too much praise, there can never be too much respect to Larry and to Louis, who became an extension of my own hands and oftentimes made me look better than I actually was. I may leave out a few names now only because I suffer from a case of butterflies and nerves. Public speaking is not my strong suit. But
you're fine.
Bobby Gregg was on drums, Bernard Purdy was on drums, Jimmy Johnson was on drums, Steve Gadd was on drums, Rick Marotta was on drums, Richard Crooks was on drums, Barry Lazarus was on drums, Gary Chester was on drums, Bobby Colombi was on drums, on our guitars, midnight calls and all, in their pajamas would come Les Paul, Bucky Pizzarelli, John Pizzarelli as a young kid, Steve Katz, George Wadenius, Hugh McCracken, Eric Gale, Trade Martin, Elliot Randall, Sal DeTroya, Al Gorgoni, Cornell Dupree. Our bass was Richard Davis, Don Payne, Jim Felder, Chuck DeMonico, Joe Macco, Stu Woods, George DeVivier. Our keyboards, an unknown Barry Manilow, Stephen Schwartz, who went on to write Godspell, Melissa Manchester, Richard T., Ron Frangipani, Frank Owens, Paul Griffin, Roger Kellaway, Randy Edelman, David Sanchez, Joey Delia. Of course, the strings and horns. We had David Nadian from the New York Philharmonic, Gene Orloff, Joe Mallon, Carmela Mallon, Harold Coletta, Seymour Barrett, Joe Grimm, Phil Bodden, Romeo Penquay, Freddie Lipsius, Tony Studd, Mickey Gravine, Alan Raff, Bert Collins, Joe Shepley, Louis Soloff, Jimmy Buffington, Don Corrado, Tony Miranda, and Clarence Clemens. Let me not forget Vinnie Lopez, if I left his name out, I'm sorry. The background singer, Cissy Houston, mother of the great Whitney, Maretha Stewart, Valerie Simpson, Tony Wine, Gail Cantor, Myrna Smith, Ann Phillips, Fran Carroll, Marilyn Jackson, Joanne Vent, Leslie Miller, Merle Miller, Nona Hendricks, and Louis' wife, Suki Lahov. The clients, APCO Industries, Columbia Records, Epic Records, Neighborhood Records, Electra Records, Tomato Records, Big Tree Records, RCA Records, and the artists, where it all began. Janice Ian, Jeannie and Dennis, Melanie, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Dusty Springfield, Loudon Wainwright III, John Paul Jones, Randy Edelman, Bernadette Peters, Kenny Karen, Linda Lita Cohen, James Taylor, Abigail Hanness, Peter Asher, Gordon Waller, Craig Anderson, John Herold, Eric Weisberg and Deliverance, White Cloud, Kenny Kosek, Teddy Randazzo, Artie Kaplan, Bob McAllister, Harbus, Alan Gerber, Julie Sayers, Richard Harris, Penman Floyd, the Ramones, and the E Streeters, and Bruce. When Teddy Cooper and Jimmy Predicos walked into 914 Studios and introduced me to Mike Appel and Bruce Springsteen in 1972, that prelude and the subsequent recording sessions forever changed the face of rock and roll. We did it. 914 was very much a part of the equation. The producers, Peter Shakarik, Marty Thau, Alan Steckler, Teddy Cooper, Jimmy Kredigos, Mike Appel, Ronnie Frangipani, Kevin Eggers, Thomas Jefferson Kay, Neil Portnow, current COO and president of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, Doug Morris, current chairman of Columbia Records, and the managers, Mike Appel, Gene Harcourt Powell, Milt Kramer. The label execs, Charles Koppelman, John Hammond, Bruce Lundvall, Erwin Siegelstein. And to the people responsible for pulling this together are Mike Mangione, Robert Brum of the Journal News, LoHud.com, Joe Delia, Joe Durso, Brian Lee, owner of the diner, property where the studio once stood, and the historical head of the Historical Society of Rockland County. Many thank yous.
Thank you.
Finally, I always knew we were making great, but I didn't know we were making history. This is an honor that I share with all who graced our studio. and think of the good times. Thank you.
And the song's called What Took You So Long? So long, or you mad at me? Well, what took you so long? Was I too blind to see you? When I was right and you was wrong. Well, what took you so long? Well, what took you long? Was it something I said? Well, what took you all to try? Got you seen all baby, all I can say is what took you all to Unveiled.